Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome in. This is Guerrilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse Montano. I'm going to be joined by Meghan Angley in just a few moments. And on today's episode, is it back to hoodie weather or am I just a weenie? But first, do want to remind you guys about our great friends over at RefiJet. Did you know that you could refinance your auto loan? Well, with RefiJet, you could save around $150 every month, all with just a soft credit pull and zero hassle. Lower payments, flexible terms, even cash back from your car's equity. RefiJet does the work. You get the savings. Start today at RefiJet.com, the faster, easier way to refinance. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome in. This is Guerrilla Sports Off Ice on a Monday afternoon. New week, new show, new vibes, new everything. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley. We got Chloe. We got Ashley. And I think John's back there too. Meghan, everyone just wants to be a part of our show.
Aww.
How are you doing today on this Monday?
I'm doing great. It's been a fun 48 hours for me.
Yeah.
Hockey heaven. And there's also finally hockey back. Also, you are just a weenie. It's not sweater weather yet.
Now, will you at least give me that upstairs in our building is often quite chilly?
So I don't sit in the back room.
Fair.
So it's comfortable up there outside of the back room.
Meghan, I have moved. My desk used to be in the back. I can't sit back there anymore.
And I believe all of you because multiple people came out from the back room today to talk about how cold it was.
Yes.
So I believe all of you.
And because like we've in the summer, we can, because here's the issue. We've got a handful of people in this office who are kind of like me. We're like, we definitely get chilly upstairs. And then there's two people who are the exact opposite and run really hot. And one of those people just so happens to be the boss. So we keep temperatures where the boss wants. And we all get very cold. But when I saw that it was going to be overcast today, kind of windy, I said, I don't know if I'm going to get my standard warm up from just, opening the sliding door and letting it warm up the office. So I went with the hoodie, but I do have shorts on. So that helps. Got to keep it balanced.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
It's all about finding the balance. Like you said, fun last couple days for you. Not only did we have the Avs and DU Alumni event last night, which we will talk plenty about. You had another DU Alumni event. This is Meghan Angley, DU alum. A DU Alumni event that you went to this morning. We're going to get into all of that, but we're also going to continue our media guest series here. I'm deciding to dub it. Conor McGahey, the voice of the Colorado Avalanche, will be joining us here in about 25 minutes for the back half of the show to just talk about his perspective on the offseason, what he likes, what he doesn't like, what, just the different moves they've made. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Jared Bednar, as today is the 9-year anniversary since the Colorado Avalanche announced the hiring of Jared Bednar. And just real quick, it's amazing that they won any games that season, given that you had to do a coaching search, a hire, and an implementation this close to training camp.
Yeah.
Like, does Jared I don't even know, it was a historically bad season, but Jared Bednar should even get some credit for them winning at all that season.
Yeah, and being able to build lasting relationships with players outside of it because of how bad it was. I think that things could have been, such a bad first impression in that inaugural season that it was irreparable. The relationships, player to coach, and so to have had something of a foundation underneath the rubble of that 48-point season is very impressive in its own right.
Absolutely. So we'll talk more about that later as well once Connor jumps on. Looking forward to getting Connor on here. Always a great chat, and the fans love him. He does a great job on the radio doing play-by-play for the Avs. So going to be great to chat with him. But Meghan, let's talk about the event that you were at this morning and the tie that it essentially has to what we saw last night. I imagine that a lot of the guys that you spoke to this morning, guys that you saw out there, I'm assuming there was a lot of them that even if they weren't directly participating in the game last night, they were at least in attendance. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was really fulfilling for me that I don't think I really touched on with you is a lot of the players in last night's game were part of my year group at DU.
Nice,
and
yeah.
so there's a good amount of familiarity. And also a lot of those players are playing hockey together for the first time in years. And they're getting to do it in DU jerseys, on DU ice. And then, of course, on the Avs alumni side of it, there's Hall of Famers opposite them. So the DU side of it, getting to be at the golf tournament, a lot of the same faces from last night, whether they were in the game or around the game, Logan O'Connor, that kind of thing. It was just a really fun thing. They do it every year, though, too. So this isn't really new to me, to be honest with you. But it's great to be able to catch up with some of the alumni that do come out for it that you don't get to regularly see, but have exciting NHL careers of their own.
I know you talked to Troy Terry, and you can actually find that over on our Gorilla Sports X page. You can find the full, about 7.5 minutes. Meghan chatted with Anaheim Duck forward and Highlands Ranch, Colorado native Troy Terry. And one of the things, at the very beginning that I thought a lot about last night, there was a couple of us in the media talking as the game was getting ready to get started, and they brought guys out for availability before the alumni game last night. And Troy Terry came out at the same time Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg were addressing the media. And so there wasn't a ton of media to meet Troy Terry, but I thought to myself, as a kid who grew up in Colorado, he probably understands, Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, those are some pretty cool faces and names to be sharing the ice with. He talked about that, about the fact that it was really special for him to get to play opposite some of those guys. Just what did he have to say? And your takeaways, Meghan, from not just your event this morning, but what all we saw yesterday.
Well, for Troy Terry, having grown up in Colorado, Highlands Ranch native, as you've pointed out, it was two sides that he has appreciation for. And so he obviously loves his program through DU hockey, but grew up admiring players like Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg himself. So there was no losing for someone like Troy Terry in last night's game. And I think, I asked him if it was a pride point to be representing DU in this game. And really, it was just the competitive nature of hockey players coming through more than anything. Because I think even Scott Mayfield kind of touched on feeling a bit starstruck playing opposite some Hall of Famers. So I think on the whole, it was an interesting event of its kind because this DU Pro Camp happens every summer and players like Devon Taves have been a part of it. Kyle Quincy used to join in on it. And so there's always been this kind of mix of Avs and DU players culturally. But to give them a game experience to play against each other, I think was most rewarding for the players overall to be in that competitive environment with teammates yet again.
Well, and I thought what Troy told you this morning was funny, how he was like, it was an interesting dynamic. It was two Denver-based teams that I think a lot of people are fans of both. Or, if you're a supporter of DU, you're probably a supporter of the Colorado Avalanche and vice versa. And I just thought that was a funny thing for him to point out, because you and I went around and we were talking to a bunch of folks beforehand. And there were definitely, and I actually had the thought, there was a lot of people that when we were going through, who do you think is going to win? Oh, the Avs, no doubt. Oh, let's go Avs. Well, we found a couple DU folks, but I was like, I wonder how this is going to be received by fans, like from the cheering standpoint. And what it ended up being was they were cheering for everything, every goal, every save. And I thought that was, it felt like it was fun for me, because of what you've heard me talk about a lot with, like, my exposure to the game as a young kid. But now my passion for growing the game and seeing all those people in there just cheering for Colorado hockey. I just loved it.
Yeah. 'Cause obviously huge applause, standing ovation for Joe Sakic.
Mhm.
Landy shows up.
Yeah, Peter Forsberg got a huge pop.
Peter Forsberg, Milan Hejduk scores. It's just really exciting, right? But you're hearing roarous applause for Matt Davis too, because people have that recent familiarity of the two-time national champion. And so everybody was being celebrated, and it was a lot of fun for that reason.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I love to hear, like I said, from a guy like Troy Terry just this morning, that it was special for them as well, you know, because I do feel like you see some of these events that you know, teams, organizations pull together from the alumni front, and there's a lot of just like messing around out there. No one's, and not that anyone was taking last night like overly seriously, but you could tell that was a fun night for them. You could tell that was a fun, you know, even for a guy like Troy Terry, who plays opposite guys like Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, Nathan McKinnon every night. There is just something different about those, you know, legacy guys. Now that in 15, 20 years, yes, the current era of NHLers will have that same thing. But like, you got to play against Peter Forsberg while he was wearing an Avs jersey in Colorado yesterday. Like, and that's pretty awesome.
Like Reinprecht and Dan Heino are in peak physical form, giving these youngsters a run for their money. And I have to imagine there's something that those young players get excited about in seeing that. Like, that is their future. Like John Michael Lyles one time told me, all roads lead to beer league in the end. And I think what's also true is all of these players will always be hockey players to their core. And I think this gives them a little bit of an avenue after their playing careers to still find ways to do things that they love in a competitive setting. And everybody was a little bit giggly talking about the third period last night, because it was clear that both sides were locked in at that point, and it got really competitive. And I think that's where the true nature, that innate hockey instinct, took over for everybody, and it made everything so much more fun.
To be my brother-in-law is a professional cyclist, and I remember years and years ago when I first met him, did you ever have a Wii, Nintendo Wii?
I wasn't born.
They had those like series of games that worked with like a balance board. It was like meant to get you more active, but there were some really fun games on that, like tracked high scores and all that stuff. And there was one night where my now brother-in-law, I saw him get hyper competitive on like someone knocked him off the high score, and he stayed up like till like 4 a.m. trying to get it back. And that was, I remember, my first like real exposure to like, oh, not only is there a different like talent level and like there's a different competitiveness level to professional athletes, let alone athletes like, you know, that climb to the heights that guys like Peter Forsberg, you know, Joe Sakic, Dan, you know, Stanley Cup champ, like that's a different level of competitiveness. And that's always my favorite part of games like last night or all-star games. And like they all start off, oh yeah. Kyle Quincy like dropped a shoulder into somebody. Is that as like the Avs alumni fell behind by like 2 or 3? It was
Gabe Levin.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh, okay. And he, you know, kind of made a joke once the guy was down on the ice, but I was like, that was instinct taking over there.
It was, because they love each other. That's the like accountant CPA for the alumni group that he bowled over. They know each other very well. But there's a huge size difference between the two players that instinct took over for Quincy, but the acknowledgement of what Gabe Levin is and size, just, it's an unfair battle.
So no, it was so great to see Eric Johnson up in the booth on the call with Conor McGahey, who will be joining us here in just a bit. Like you said, Gabe Landeskog's in the house.
Devon
Taves shows up, jumps on the broadcast. And, you know, Tyson Barrie's there as well. And we're actually going to park our Tyson Barrie conversation for the end of the week. We had even speculated, I believe, on the show of, well, if he's playing for the alumni, that might be a sign that he's done. But he, you know, it is official now. He has retired from the game of hockey. He's officially on the alumni side of it. And you and I talked earlier today that we want to make sure we don't have time on today's show, but we parked some time for Tyson Barrie. I say it on here all the time. He walked so Cale Makar could run in the NHL. And congratulations, Tyson Barrie. Great to see him last night as well.
Absolutely. Look, I think the Tyson Barrie effect needs to be studied. I mean, off ice too. The friendships that he's forged with every hockey player, every walk of life, right, has adored just having him as a teammate and a friend. And he is like the human embodiment of sunshine, even disarming the prickliest of Nathan McKinnons.
Mhm.
And I think that says something about his character. And so amazing career, amazing guy off the ice. We'll definitely talk about it more.
Slamming a beer during his intermission interview last night.
And that's got to be it, right? Like, he's just so authentic and charismatic. You can't fake that.
I'll say the story for Friday. His PTO story from last year, I thought was so damn funny. But again, like, you sit there and it's like no other player in the NHL would even tell this story, and Tyson Barrie just can't help himself. Out at the tournament this morning, not only were you talking with guys about the alumni game and what happened yesterday, but you actually caught up with Scott Mayfield, who is a former recent teammate of Brock Nelson, and you're able to kind of unpack and have that conversation with him as well. And I think that's going to serve as a nice segue into when we do have Connor jump on the show with us, and just talking a bit about this summer and where the team is at and what the expectations are. But what were you able to glean from Scott Mayfield this morning about Brock Nelson and maybe what fans should be expecting? Because as you and I have talked about, it maybe wasn't the results that Avs fans were wanting out of Brock Nelson. I think there was a lot of positives that you could take out of what we saw from Brock Nelson. But after your conversation with Mayfield, what are you expecting out of Brock?
Yeah, in trying to gauge the fan response to the Brock Nelson extension this summer, I think people were ultimately neutral to a little bit underwhelmed. I don't think it leaned too negative, but I didn't think it was very positive overall. And given that this is a multi-time 30-goal scorer with 26 goals even just this last season and then 30-plus goals the 3 seasons prior, I think he's easily due for a 30-goal season with a full length of runway and some consistency and stability here in Colorado. But Scott Mayfield all but confirmed that the skill on the ice is certainly going to impress the fans. But what he volunteered a few times is how his off-ice character is going to be the thing that Avs fans notice most about him. And I found that really interesting because when you do have such a prolific goal scorer as recently as these last few seasons, if the character is the thing that's sticking out, one, it points to a really good cultural fit and why this contract, this extension just feels right. And I know because of what they gave up in the trade, that also helps to make it feel a little bit better. But I think people are underestimating the, one, offensive impact that Brock Nelson can have on this team. Two, the cultural add in being such a great teammate and a leader. It left huge holes to fill in, the Islanders lineup when he left. And I think giving him some time to stabilize and then allowing that skill to shine through that we've seen consistently over these last few seasons, I think Avs fans are going to walk away from this year feeling a real different attitude toward Brock Nelson and what he brings to that 2C position.
Well, and I think we saw, and again, maybe that was what people were frustrated about. I felt like we saw the flashes and the glimpses of what not only makes Brock Nelson good, but what makes him unique as a player. He's a solid defensive forward. I think he's a smart player. I think he thinks the game. Like, you saw a lot of those flashes just hadn't quite come together. Were you able, and it's fine, were you able to talk to him at all about that kind of what you're just alluding to, of like, he did so many things right? Did he see a difference in the way that Brock looked or anything like that in terms of it looks like he's getting adjusted somewhere new?
No, I teed up a question that way in talking about how he was ripped from the only NHL organization he's known in his career.
Ripped is so dramatic, such a dramatic.
It is so dramatic.
I love that.
And that was the question then of, with a full season to acclimate, what can Avs fans expect? And that was the answer of the skill. The skill is going to come through. It's going to shine through. So I think that was the less direct way of acknowledging the time that it took for him to get adjusted. And I think he feels a confidence, Mayfield, that is, that Brock Nelson won't have any trouble getting back up to that offensive production clip that he was producing at on the island.
It's I think it's important for fans to remember with a player like Brock Nelson, because there was such a, I don't necessarily even think it was unfair, but like there was definitely a knee-jerk reaction based on what Avs fans saw. And especially because I think there was a lot of people who assumed that it was going to end up just being a rental at the end of the day, that Brock Nelson was going to come in, do what he did with the Avs for however long it was, and then walk in free agency, that people, I think, judged what has been a pretty consistent and remarkable career. And to me, it's underscored by the fact he's going back to USA's orientation camp for the Olympics. This is a guy who just played for Team USA at the Four Nations, is a legitimate contender to be on the Olympic roster. Like, Brock Nelson has a big body of work in his career that says this is a home run second line center for the Avs. And I think it's good to hear the perspective from someone who was with him, not just for 8 weeks from trade deadline to the end of the playoffs.
Well, in looking at some of the numbers in his career to date, and even from the playoffs, in his possession numbers, this as a regular season was a top 4 for him, 5v5. And you look at the possession numbers from the line in the playoffs when Landeskog was added to it, and they played about 42 minutes together with Nichushkin, Landeskog, Brock Nelson, and it was a 63.04 Corsi for percentage at 5v5. 18th in the league in takeaways this last season. That's among defensemen and forwards. So one of the high energy forwards that, in talking about that length and that reach, that is stripping the puck from other players. And I talk about that in some of the smart defensive reads that Brock Nelson has, that I think a credit to his defensive game that doesn't always get talked about. But then going back to those 30 goal seasons, the seasons prior to this last one, nearly getting to the 30 goal mark, even with the trade happening this last year. And then, of course, 27 goals in 78 playoff games to date. So I think his playoff experience points to better results in the future too. This was a very small sample size, but that's a much bigger one. And those are pretty compelling goal scoring numbers.
The production, I think, is something with Brock Nelson in terms of what I'm expecting to see out of him this season. I think the production is going to end up becoming one of those, like, wow, he does all this other stuff well, and he produces at that level. Like, I'm really anxious to see a full summer of him knowing that this is where he's going to play. And then, the majority, at least, of a full season playing alongside guys like Gabe Landeskog and Val Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen. And I think you threw out something really interesting last week. I believe it was when we had Evan on, of could him and Marty Netchus find some chemistry playing next to each other and kind of give you that second, zone entry option on the, on that second line. Like, I think Brock Nelson is going to become a really useful player for the Avs in ways that go beyond just the production, which I think is where I know I spent a lot of my focus when the Avs acquired him. And I think there's a lot of fans that, look at that and say, wow, 30 goal scorer, 28, whatever. I think the production is going to be something that kind of comes in addition to, because I think Brock Nelson is going to give the Avs some quality minutes this year.
I think it's a great call out that the production is certainly the step forward that we can observe in his game, but I think we'll also see the two-way game be a strength of this team. In D-zone faceoffs in the playoffs, he was 53.7% at the dot. And I think when you saw the overall additions down the middle with Coyle, Drury, and Nelson, and of course McKinnon at the top, the Avs were a better defensive team by the end of the regular season. And so that's the other part of Brock Nelson's game that I think we just began to see. And it's because what he's going to do at the faceoff dot, for example, is probably not going to wow you. It's going to be a steadying presence, but that was certainly needed in crucial moments in the playoffs. And imagine then the result if not, right? If he had not had so much success in some of those D-zone starts. And it's not something you want to take for granted either. You want to be thinking of the ways in which that improves the bottom line for the Avs as well. And so I think the goal scoring is going to be the thing that really is going to pop off the page, but the intangibles of his game that strengthen them defensively are going to be another piece of Brock Nelson.
Well, I mean, how often do we talk about that too with Nazem Kadri, of what made him so effective on that second unit wasn't just that he was able to, produce the way that he was able to, but that he was someone that the Avs clearly felt comfortable going out there, taking difficult matchups, being someone who could shut guys down, and just being that, little bit more defensively responsible type center that is different than what Nathan MacKinnon gives you. And I think that is through the different guys that they tried since 2022 to fill that lane of second line center. I did feel like one of the issues, and we talked about it at length with time, was with Casey Middlestat, of like, yeah, he could be a great 2C, but he's really got to develop that second part of his game in his own end. Right after, when it was the, can Alex Newhook ascend to be this second line center? It was, that's a lot of ground for a young player to cover, and having to, not only focus on what you're doing in the offensive zone, but become a defensively responsible center. It's tough to play in the middle of the ice. The fact that the Avs have someone in Brock Nelson who, not only do you feel more confident in what he's done as a player, just the maturity and just being I think I saw someone say, he's a veteran, like through and through. That has to give you a little bit of, he's made of pure veteran sauce. Like we talk about Jared Bednar needing to trust guys. I think Brock Nelson's going to be an easy guy to earn his favor.
Stable, trusted. I think, we've seen versions of the Avs where the second line is not trusted. They haven't found that right piece down the middle, and they lean heavily then on that top line. I mean, we even have seen it going back to this season where like 75% of the goal share over this 20-game stretch was just the same five guys, the three up top and the two on the top of the pair there. And so it's important to have a second line that works. Obviously, a healthy Gabriel Landeskog really influences
moves the needle.
The kind of year that Brock Nelson is going to have, but Brock Nelson in his own right also has a say in that. And I don't think we've really scratched the surface of what he is as a player in Colorado.
Well, and you know who, and I know why we haven't spent a ton of time talking about him this summer, but that I think could have a big impact on Brock Nelson is Val Nichushkin. When we last spoke to Chris McFarland, he mentioned Val is doing really well. We were checking in with him. He's having a great summer. He's feeling great. You hope he's not, dealing with the same issues and things like that. But, healthy Gabe Landeskog or mostly healthy Gabe Landeskog, like that's big. If you can get a version of Val Nichushkin that is, inching its way back closer to something that we saw in 2022, I mean, that's a big time player that is unlike probably anybody that Brock Nelson has ever played with before, that could make a real difference. If you could have Val Nichushkin going, mixing in a healthy Gabe Landeskog, plus a full season of Brock Nelson, I think that's a lot of reasons to be excited about that second line.
I think it's a hard second line to contain because they're going to offer different things that are difficult to play against. I think Landeskog's is going to be especially in your face, and Val Nichushkin's going to be breathing down your back, but Brock Nelson's going to be sneaking in and picking your pocket. Every player poses some kind of a threat, and together, I think it's very complementary and just needed time, because you're absolutely right. I don't think Brock Nelson has really played with a player like Nichushkin, and that is going to be a bit of a learning curve that I think we're just seeing the beginnings of that process.
And if you don't have an answer for it right in this moment, that's fine. But I was asked this last week, and I think it's an interesting conversation. And know that this was not asked to me in the vein of like Rantanen versus Nichushkin, but more trying to underscore how good Val Nichushkin is. Let's say you get them both at 100%. It's their best game possible. Who would you rather have, Val Nichushkin or Mikko Rantanen?
Who are they playing against?
Wow, that's a great follow-up question.
And it's because they both have two things that come to mind that I would find very useful that would help me to make that decision.
And I guess, honestly, even you answering that way kind of answers the question, because the point of the conversation we were having was like, Val Nichushkin is way better than people give him credit for when he's at his best.
Yes, there is a world where I would pick Val Nichushkin,
right,
depending on the opponent.
Right. And again, that is not at all a shot at Mikko Rantanen. That's just this is a very good player that the Avs have in Val Nichushkin. That could be skating next.
And I just wanted to call back to Evan pointing out that he has heard that Val Nichushkin has had a really good summer and that he's done a lot of looking inward, working with professionals to try and figure out what has been keeping him out. And, I'm guessing solutions, things like that. That's very encouraging for me to hear. Yeah. And I'm excited then for the season that Val Nichushkin might have. Hopefully he's gotten some answers, some solutions to stay in the lineup a little bit more regularly. And I also don't hate the idea of him managing his games over an 82-game season just with the way that he plays hockey too. I think that the way that he plays is going to come with maybe the expectation that you do miss a little bit of time to manage the workload on the whole.
Yeah, no, I think that might potentially be a theme for a couple guys coming up this year, but don't just take it from us. We have the voice of the Colorado Avalanche, Conor McGahey, who will be joining us right now. He is the voice of the Colorado Avalanche. You hear him on 92.5 Altitude Sports Radio, and one of my favorite guys just to chat with around the rink. Conor, thank you for parking some time. How you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
We're great. We got to be back at the rink last night, and that's just where we wanted to start. I grew up, watching those the legacy guys, Forsberg and Sakic and Hejduk. For you, Conor, how cool is it to get to say Forsberg to Hejduk? Just some awesome names. I'm sure you weren't sure if you'd ever get to call.
I mean, it was fantastic, and there was only one way to have them play, and that was together. And I'm talking to Riker and Johnny Mitchell afterwards. They were both like, I just want to give both of them the puck. Right, that's all I wanted to do. Is like I have to stress to my entire night was based on getting Milan Hejduk and Peter Forsberg the puck, but. Everyone, I mean, the whole weekend was an absolute grand slam. I think that the game yesterday was great from a lot of perspectives, achieving goals that they wanted to for the whole reason that the event existed, and everyone had an absolute blast. I mean, 7-7 going to a shootout is ideally what you wanted. But for me, yeah, I mean, I grew up with Peter Forsberg was my favorite player of all time, hands down, without a doubt. And so to be able to do that was great for me. But over 5,000 people had a great time watching live, and we also had it on Altitude last night, and we had thousands more watching there. So it was a perfect night last night at Magnus.
No, it was. It was great, and everything that DU did, you guys did a great job. You and Kiefer and Riker getting all that stuff pulled together. It was a great event. We had a blast, and we told ourselves we had to put a time limit on ourselves talking about it on this show. As we were, doing the first half of this,
the whole show about it.
I could do an entire show on that game last night. How was EJ in the booth? How was having him up there with you?
Sometimes you can tell that people just have it and are naturals, and Eric Johnson is a natural. his timing. I've worked with people before where you have to, poke them, be like, okay, you can talk now. But EJ, obviously, as you know, has never had a problem with that. But his timing was very good, and the relationship between play-by-play and an analyst is all about timing. When do you jump in to play? How long do you have a comment for? And I thought for his first broadcast ever, it was really, really, really good. And so he had a blast doing it, and we got, he got nothing but positive feedback. There's some, I always get some, which is good. I like some negative feedback. It's solid. But EJ was he scored 100% last night, so it was solid.
I love it. And you and I have talked about it before. I do always find the negative feedback that you had. Can you believe that Avalanche radio guy supports the Avalanche? It's like, yeah, I can believe that.
It's like three fan bases. Just I don't understand. It's St. Louis, Seattle randomly, and then Dallas, who are just all over me all the time. I don't get it.
We had a comment earlier in the show saying, ask Connor what his 5 least favorite things are about the Dallas Stars. And I said, that will be its own show. We'll do that later in the year.
I don't hate them. They hate me. I don't know why. I don't get it.
Connor, Meghan went out to the DU alumni golf tournament this morning, and she caught up with Scott Mayfield. And I'm sure you heard a little bit of what we were talking about there, but what Brock Nelson has the potential to bring to that second line for the Avs. We saw him with Gabe and Val Nichushkin last year. And I guess let's start with the Brock Nelson deal, but they get Brock Nelson locked up for a couple years to be that second line center there. What have you liked about what they've done to address that position on the roster that was problematic for the last couple of years, them needing to find someone, but then kind of the ripple effect that's been able to have on them saying, we are running it back. We liked our group from last year.
Yeah, and the group, and look, Joe and Chris said that at that end of the year press conference last year. They said this was a great group, and they just didn't have the luck to get it done. And I think we can finally stop talking about can we just not talk about second line center ever again on any segment? We'd be done with that since 2022. I've said that on NHL Network Radio a number of times. I was like, I would love, please, sweet mercy, if we could not talk about that. And the way to not talk about that is to sign a guy like Brock Nelson for 3 years, right? You talked to Scott Mayfield, and I couldn't play in that this morning because I played golf 5 times last week, both in tournaments and we shot golf at altitude up in Carbondale. 3 episodes coming to altitude. As Golf at Altitude has returned, so check that out. But I couldn't play 6 rounds in a week, so I had to tell Carl that I couldn't play this morning. But Scott Mayfield will tell you that Brock Nelson leaving the Islanders is a huge loss, and if it's a huge loss for them, it's a huge gain for the Colorado Avalanche. And now that the family is settled, now that it's just sort of calmed down, you're going to see a Brock Nelson. Look, I thought you saw a great version of Brock Nelson last year. But now you're going to see a version of Brock Nelson that earns that money and earns the respect and earns the call up to the Stars and Stripes to play for the United States in the Four Nations face-off last year and the Olympics coming up this year. This is huge for Colorado, who I think have the best top 6, period, end of story in the National Hockey League. And Brock Nelson is a huge part of that.
Talk to me about Gabriel Landeskog in that top 6 conversation. What is your expectation for the year ahead?
Well, he was arguably the best player, Meghan, in that series versus Dallas last year, and he only played, 4 games. But I just think that you saw how good he looked last night. He looks calm, and he's apparently on the ice today, skating around. I think the expectation, just like it was last year, for him to come back, it wasn't going to be we're going to get this watered-down version of Gabe Landeskog. If he was going to come back and play, you're going to get the Norse god of hockey. And I think the Norse god of hockey, and I expect to see the Norse god of hockey here in 25-26. I think that was the expectation for himself, and I think that should be our expectation for him as well this year.
Now with a little time to process the way this season came to an end.
Or process if you're in Canada.
Process. You got to trust the process. What are your overall thoughts about what the Avs need going into next year? You use the word luck, so maybe need is kind of open to interpretation here.
Yeah. Construction-wise, they needed some bottom. We talked about the top 6, which is set in stone. Very nice. But the bottom 6 is it needed a little bit of work. So signing Victor Olofsson is huge for the bottom 6 depth for the Colorado Avalanche. Remember when CMAC was talking a couple months ago, he said, we're not viewing it as lines 1 through 4. We're really viewing it as a top 6 and a bottom 6 because you have all these interchangeable pieces. So I think Olofsson is a huge part of that. You've been looking for kind of a Burakovsky type. You've been looking for that left-handed one-timer on the power play. Olofsson can be that guy. And if the numbers hold up like they did last year, you guys have talked about this ad nauseum. I'm just regurgitating a little bit. But if the defensive numbers hold up like they did last year, what a great deal for Colorado. And so they tried Jonathan Drouin on a 1-year deal that led to 2. Now it's Victor Olofsson on a 1-year deal. We'll see where that leads. But you needed NHL forwards in that bottom 6 group for Colorado, and they've started to trickle in here as the summer has gone along, especially because you don't have Logan O'Connor. So you needed bottom 6 forwards. I think you've got that. And yeah, you need a little bit of luck, and you need to have a different playoff format. I'm just kidding. It's
Yes.
which everybody wants.
Yes.
But I just think that you need to use the fuel. I used 2021 as an example. The loss to Vegas in 2021, where you're up 2-0, and then you lose 4 in a row, that fueled the playoff performance in 2022. I view this very similarly of how bad that stung last year to lose to Dallas. I think the loss in 2025 fuels a really, really good run in 2026.
Connor, I so totally agree with you about, the bottom 6 there and the way that, CMAC is talking about viewing that. And I love the comparison there, Victor Olofsson to Andre Burakovsky, because that's a guy that we've talked about. Like, you remember he was being healthy scratched. That's how deep that lineup was. Come playoffs.
Imagine taking that shot out of the lineup on purpose, right?
Right.
Because you could.
You could afford to. He's putting pucks through the net, and they're like, take a night off. So, drawing that parallel, the Avs, re-signed Yoel Kiviranta, and you disagreed with my take on Twitter, but part of that was as we're now.
Actually, everybody did.
I was going to say that was not a popular take on my behalf.
You were on an island, and nobody was sending a plane or a boat or a
Connor just floated by on his boat. Thumbs down at me. But as now you bring in Victor Olofsson and you're starting to complete this picture a bit. We were and I'm giving Meghan a little bit of a hard time here. We were running through a little bit of a lineup the other day, and suddenly you get to a point where it's like, you're scratching Yoel Kiviranta or one of those other guys. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. Like, I think that's a goal of this Avalanche, front office is we want to have enough NHL players that we're having to make difficult decisions on certain nights. They used 50 guys last year. Yeah. You do wonder if there was a part of that was, we're trying to find the right guy. You may end up with a situation here where you've got more than you need. And I mean that as a positive. Yeah.
And again, you need that. And you can say, just call a guy up from the AHL. Well, especially Meghan can tell you that it's not exactly just a little hop over the creek in Monty Python and the Holy Grail from the AHL to the NHL. I mean, it's the Grand Canyon to a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to pick on TJ Tynan, but you're taking one of the best AHL players of all time, and then gets the call up to the NHL and it doesn't quite click as much as it does down there. So it's not always the easy solution. So that's why I said you need NHL forwards who are in your lineup. And Yoel Kiviranta has turned into one of those NHL forwards. And I think that he's been such an integral part of this team, Jesse, for a couple of years now that it might be impossible to scratch Yoel Kiviranta. I know we joked about his little mini bursts of offense, but is there him and Parker Kelly for the most part? Is there a more dependable forward on the Colorado Avalanche in that bottom 6? I don't think so, which is why he's been around and which is why he's earned the money that you, for whatever reason, had a weird problem with. So that's been earned, and not just because he doesn't score, but because the Avs are based on possession, and when they lose it, they need a guy like Yoel Kiviranta to get it back. And so that's why I think that contract is totally worth it for the Avs' current situation and the way that they want to play.
It all comes back to trust, which leads me to goaltending. I want to know if Mackenzie Blackwood won you over in his playoff performance. A lot of people wondered what he'd be like in the postseason.
I mean, you knew, Meghan, that, again, it's like we were talking about EJ in the broadcast booth. Sometimes you can just tell that guys have it. Like Mackenzie Blackwood, I think, has it. It's a tough little. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on Rocky, the wonder dog here.
No, we are. This is a dog friendly pod here.
But you just knew that Mackenzie Blackwood, because of what he's done, had it in him, and the series was not his fault. I don't think at all, and I just think that the more playoff games that you play, look, some of the best Avalanche teams of all time went into a Game 7 versus the Detroit Red Wings and got, blasted by allowing 7 goals, right? And a goalie named Patrick Waugh allowed that sort of, score to happen. So you're looking at the micro and the macro when it comes to Mackenzie Blackwood and sample sizes, whether it be in big games during the regular season or during the postseason. And I think he's got it. I mean, it took about 2 seconds for me to be like, yep, he belongs. And
he's
so
a gamer.
that's a good thing for the Colorado Avalanche, clearly.
Well, and with that trust, we talk about that a lot. And one of the things with Yoel Kiviranta that nobody can argue is he's a Jared Bednar type of guy.
Totally.
Jared Bednar has a lot of confidence in the way that he plays, and that, I can put him out there and I don't have to be worried about what's going to happen. 9 years to the day since the Colorado Avalanche announced Jared Bednar as their head coach. I was telling Megan off the top, the fact that we are this close to, it's a wonder that they won any games that first year with Jared Bednar under the helm. And then Megan pointed out, and he was able to build the foundation of the culture that we now know today. I mean, for my money, he is the greatest coach in Colorado Avalanche history. Your thoughts on Jared Bednar in 9 years already here in Denver?
Well, I'd agree with that. Greatest coach in franchise history, from wins and results and everything, going back to the Nordiques, who had some great teams that led to the Avalanche winning the Cup in 1996. But for Bednar to come in, and again, this is the theme of the day. Some guys have it. Wayne Gretzky was not meant to coach, right?
Yes.
He tried with the Phoenix Coyotes. It did not work. Jared Bednar, by his own admission, was not the best player. Could throw him, could play a little defense, but he's an East Coast player. But for whatever reason, he has the tools and the gifts to be able to coach players like Yoel Kiviranta, to coach rookies, young kids, to be able to handle superstars of different varieties like Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon. Not everybody has those talents. So the fact that he's the only coach in the history of hockey to win the Kelly Cup, Calder Cup, Stanley Cup, and the fact that he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame at this instant, to me, is kind of a miss just for that accomplishment in and of itself. You talk about
never won Coach of the Year. He has never won Coach of the Year, which I think is crazy.
Which is fine. I get to vote. It's the only vote that I get, and I think it's silly. I think votes should be taken out of our hands, because you get to vote too. Votes should be taken out of our hands and given to the players, given to the front office, because dummies like us have no business in deciding who wins trophies in the National Hockey League. Because do you have any NHL games played, Jesse Montano?
No, zero. It's zero for me.
Neither do I. Shocker. So why
for me as well.
Yeah.
Megan doesn't have any. I just want to make sure. Maybe Megan snuck one in on me there. Like just one game played for Hartford back in the day or something. But we should not be voting on that. But because I do get a vote on Coach of the Year, Bedsy is always, he's rarely number one, because there are just some coaches that have, Spencer Carberry, for example. It was hard to, Scott Arniel, hard to not put those guys 1-2 last year, for example. But if there's a number 3 hole, of course I'm going to put Jared Bednar in there.
Yeah.
But what he was able to do from 16-17 to 17-18, a team that's the worst team of the modern era, into the playoffs, I mean, that's an automatic. How is that not Coach of the Year? So it's like McKinnon losing the Hart Trophy to Taylor Hall. It's the exact same thing. There's no rhyme or reason for it, except people who are voting who shouldn't be voting. So yeah, Bednar, he'll take his championships over Coach of the Year anytime. And I guarantee that's not just me talking. That would be him talking too. Yeah.
That's a great Game 7 record you got there, Pete. I'll take this ring instead.
Yeah. How about all those Stanley Cup final losses? How do those taste? Probably not great.
Yeah, not great.
All right. What's one training camp storyline that you're going to be keeping a close eye on?
Very interesting. I think 5th, 6th D for Colorado. Where are they there? Are they comfortable? Do they need to make an addition? Do they? Where does it fit in? I think you're not talking about kids making a roster. I think that oh my goodness, trade piece from Columbus. Help me.
Gavin Brindley.
Thank you, Brindley. I think Brindley's fascinating to watch because despite his size, there's a lot of people who say he's really tough to play against. And what was the theme for the 2022 Stanley Cup Colorado Avalanche.
Yep.
They were tough to play against. And I think Brindley will be the one that I'm looking at because remember, that was a big piece of the system in Columbus. It really was. So Brindley will be get probably both of my eyes because I'm not a chameleon.
I love it. He's a little honey badger.
Well, and I mention it all the time. Nico Sturm, when he got to Colorado in 2022, said, I'm going to be hard to play against. And not in the sense that I'm going to put somebody through the glass into the third row, but I'm always going to be in your hip pocket. I'm going to be on the forecheck. And so, yeah, if you can, get a couple players that are like that, I think that moves things forward for the Avs. Connor, we're going to let you go here, but we did get one super chat in. If we can get that drop. Do you have any pull in Bednar getting his hair cut?
I'm lucky enough to get to interview him every game. And there's some times where I'm always like, you remember back in 2022, you had the long hair and then you cut the hair and then we won. You remember that? Like it turned into Chris Farley between Burns. Like, you remember when you had long hair and then you cut your hair and then we won? That was awesome. I gentle reminders once in a while, but he loves it. Susan loves it. So, we may just have to overcome that and win via other avenues. But you saw the picture with the anniversary today. I mean, he's got the high and tight, looking good. So maybe if pressure comes, enough, he'll be able to do it. But here's the thing. All of us, Jesse, are jealous of, like, he's going to look good no matter what haircut he has.
Yeah, I was going to say, I get a hard time from folks because when my hair gets too long, I don't look like Jared Bednar.
No, you don't.
And I'm just starting to accept that that's maybe just that's not in the cards for me.
You should have accepted that kind of a long time ago. Same with me. I did a long time ago.
I'll keep it with the high and tight. Connor, we so appreciate you parking some time to jump on here and join us. We'll be back around the rink in just a couple weeks and seeing you more. But thanks for parking some time here.
It's my pleasure, guys. Good to see you. And as Kiefer says, we'll see you around the rink.
See ya.
Thanks, Connor. All right, that was Conor McGahey, the voice of the Colorado Avalanche. Always a pleasure to chat with around the rink, and was just always great to have on the show. So big thanks for stopping by. He's a riot, and he's one of the people that, like, I give Moj a hard time because he's so much more silly in real life. He's very buttoned up in the broadcast. Connor, I feel like what you hear on the radio is pretty similar to what you get Connor IRL.
Oh yeah.
We did have one other super chat that came in during that interview, and it was vaguely sober.
What?
Some Kivy love.
You didn't want Connor in on Kivy.
Hitting those money lights. We love it. And again, I do genuinely feel this way, not just because we were talking with Connor. When they signed Yoel Kiviranta, what was the thing that you and I talked about of like, well, they still need to be addressing what's happening, further up the lineup. As they've continued to do that, like I was mentioning to Connor, they're like, suddenly you're back to feeling good about this depth. And now suddenly you've got, you're potentially in a room where you've got an extra guy in Yoel Kiviranta. I believe it was you who drew the parallel to Burakovsky last week. He does it again here. And if that's the role that you could get a guy like Olofsson to settle into, you're feeling much better about this bottom six.
Oh, absolutely. Victor Olofsson changed my feelings about the Yoel Kiviranta signing, or I should say completed my feelings, because I always knew I had to reserve judgment until the other part of this came through. And I still don't know what the bottom six looks like. I love that Connor talks about it as just the bottom six, this kind of blended whole unit, because it will be mixed up, without Logan O'Connor in the picture and with Jack Drury probably moonlighting as the 3C, at least for right now. There are going to be lines that we see at the start of this season that we never see again. And that's all the fun. So I'm excited to see it. And honestly, I don't know where Kivy fits in May, but I'll be curious to see it, because in my projected lineup, I was omitting him by accident, and I just wanted to put Matt Steinberg in the lineup. It was really my love of prospects won over my like of Kiviranta. And so I don't know what his fit is in the postseason. I still go back to that Winnipeg series, and I sound annoying at this point, but I didn't dislike that line with Wood and Colton. But what that line was is probably different from what this team needs moving forward, seeing how hard it is to come by scoring with how solid defensively teams are, especially like if the first round matchup is a team like a Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
The margins then for scoring are going to be so thin because these teams are not going to allow you to do very much. And so any offensive edge that you can give the whole of your lineup might matter just a tiny bit more to get you out of the first round. You're still going to want the grinders, the blue collar habits type players, but I think you needed the Victor Olofsson. That's the end note, right? You needed the shooter, the pure goal scorer to add to that bottom six.
And you know, you and I have talked a lot about that middle six, which comprises portions of both. And I think having a guy like Victor Olofsson, to the point you just made a minute ago of the relative uncertainty of availability for the first, let's say 6 to 8 weeks, with a guy like Logan O'Connor, with the potential load management of a guy like not only Gabe Landeskog, but as you were mentioning right before we chatted with Connor, potentially Val Nichushkin as well, to have a guy like Olofsson that you can move around a bit. You can put him on a line with, you know, Nathan McKinnon for a game or two, if that's, you know, what it calls for, the situation calls for. He can be a power play guy for you. Like he gave you some versatility there that, again, when the Kiviranta signing first happened, what you and I both acknowledged of like Kiviranta, not the problem. You needed someone like Olofsson to fill that role so that you could feel more confident about having guys like Kiviranta and Parker Kelly and you know, those types kind of funneling in behind there. And I think to the point that like we're already getting into these, like, all right, well, if this is the group come May, maybe plus one more addition at the deadline, like, you're in some tough conversations, some tough decision making. And I think that's exactly what the Avs are going for.
Absolutely, because this isn't close to fully complete, but it's still really good. They're ready to start the season with this lineup.
I agree.
But they're not ready to start the playoffs. And they don't need to be come October.
Right. And you know, I've had people, you know, that I've talked to in the past that say, hey, there's no rule that says your roster has to be finalized by the first day of training camp. Hey, it's all right. You can't win the Stanley Cup before Christmas. You know, what did the Avs talk about in 2022? We can't win the second round playing in the first round. We got to get through the first round first. And then even still, when, you know, that pressure of, oh man, round 2, you think about it. I remember Nathan McKinnon telling us very clearly, like, nope, it's game 1. We can't win the round tonight. We can't win this series tonight. We got to go out and win this game. Avs got to, you know, same type of approach. Like you just said, you don't need a May center in September.
There's internal pressure for Kiviranta too, to replicate the success of last season, because this is just a 1-year contract. And on the heels of a career high 16 goal season, I don't know what contract negotiations actually look like. I wasn't in the room, but I imagine settling back with the Avs on what I think is a fair contract.
This is a great call out.
Is an interesting thing then. Did he maybe expect to command more money? Was he really looking in the market elsewhere? I don't know. But this next year will be very intriguing for the type of money he can command if he can build 2 seasons, that kind of goal scoring ability. And, you know, it might price him out of Colorado officially, which we felt he was on the brink of doing. And so it's sort of maybe the positive spin too, that we get to have Kiviranta only locked into 1 year to have that motivation then to encourage, you know, he's personally motivated for his next contract.
Well, and I think you're totally right that I would be willing to bet there's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Like you said, we don't know. I wasn't in any of his negotiations.
I tried. I bugged all these rooms.
Right. But I would imagine that the conversation between him and his agent on June 25th was, we're going to get some nice offers out there. You're 16 goal scorer. You've had a couple good runs here, playoff performance. Here we go. And it just didn't materialize probably the way that they were expecting, whether it be in term length, in dollar value, maybe the teams that were calling, not to take a side swipe at the Sabres, but like, was Buffalo calling him? Were some of those bottom feeder teams calling him? I would imagine that if any version of that was the case, to your point, there's probably a highly motivated player there to say that wasn't an anomaly. even if I don't score 16 goals again, I can still be that effective. And see, Megan, that's what I get for making fun of you before the show started for having dropped your water bottle a couple times today.
It's more likely than you think. It could happen to you.
It could happen to anyone. I'm going to move this out of arm's reach. As I was saying, I am that player. Even if I don't, put up 16 goals, I can be just as effective. I can be an important part of the team. I can be a trusted player because, again, one way or the other, the market this summer said, you're an NHL player, but not to the level that you're asking for. And I'm with you. Yoel Kiviranta gets one more year for a cup contending team to go out and say, you guys are all wrong. I am, and I can be valuable to a team
Jesse
like
Montano,
Jesse, you're wrong.
You're wrong. I am that B.
Oof. Nice.
I know.
Good call.
I also almost called you Kivy. Vaguely. I don't know what profanity I used. I believe you when you said I cursed on the last show, but I actually don't know when I cursed. So if there's a way you can tell me.
Ooh, if you can't remember, that's actually $100 fine for the swear jar. So
oh my goodness.
I'm gonna go review the tape. Megan, anything else for today? We're gonna be back on tomorrow. We got another guest joining us in studio tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anything else for today?
No.
Fun weekend. I tweeted it out earlier. It was a really nice way to ease back into being at the rink. Usually, most seasons, it's kind of, you go from 0 to you're at the rink every day for training camp and you just kind of go. It was nice to get back, get some credentials, pick up credentials, navigate a different building, get up to it was nice to
different buildings.
The worst. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley. Got Chloe and Ashley behind the glass today. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Arif Dean, Colorado Hockey Now, will be joining us here in the Gorilla Sports studios. But until then, have a great afternoon, everybody. We will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye.